Buongiorno, siamo qui con Martin Cannard, Vice President Product Strategy di Netwrix. Netwrix è uno dei vendor a portfolio di .force e oggi siamo qui con Martin che ci spiegherà qual è oggi l'identità di Netwrix e il raggiungimento di tutti i vari use case di Netwrix, che non è più solo auditor, ma è anche pronta a fare il prossimo passo nella artificial intelligence. Martin, we are here together, so you can help us understand that Netwrix is not just auditor anymore. It is a number of features that come from acquisition integration that serves a much larger scope in cybersecurity. And so can you give us a quick overview on what Netwrix is about?
Absolutely, be happy to. Yeah, so Netwrix has really evolved, over the years. I mean, you're obviously very familiar with Netwrix Auditor, as you mentioned. But when we think about cybersecurity, it's multifaceted because you don't have to necessarily deal with one specific area, so some of the whole. So we've grown in our areas. So, DSPM, ITDR, privileged access management. Really all of those areas that allow us to be able to drill down and look at the identity, because essentially this is where, security starts with, is locking down the identity.
So there's a big focus on identity.
Absolutely, okay. Yeah. And that's right, because it's where it starts. I mean, the identity is a bit that gets compromised. I mean, that's, if we start thinking of, typical attack chains, whether it happens in Active Directory, Entra, or, starts in one or the other and moves hybrid, there's always, a compromise, of sort. I mean, identity, belongs to a user that needs to go in and do things in an organization. But you also have identities that are tied up with other things, the non-human identities, where you have service accounts, you might have applications running, integrations. Those are all using identities. And one of the key areas, and this is one of the emerging areas that we are getting heavily focused on, is AI. And if we think about, how typically AI, we're buying all of these tools up, we're putting them in our organizations to be able to, make ourselves more efficient, because we can make these generative AI prompts in order to be able to drill down on different areas. But the problem is like we forget about the level of access that a lot of these AI agents have.
You mean the privileges?
Exactly, that's right. I mean, it could be that, you're asking question, to an LLM, but at the same time, that is actually accessing a lot of your back-end systems with unfettered access. It could have access to your entire customer, information, your database, Salesforce, whatever happens to be. And so
the credential is not just a credential, it's a credential that has powers, has privileges. This is
it does. Yeah, it does, exactly. And that's why, what we're doing is we're using AI in a couple of different ways. So first of all, we're using AI very extensively in-house as well. We're very big proponents. It's like, the AI train is moving along, and it's you have to kind of get on with it. It's not going to go away. But the key thing is making sure that companies that are actually implementing AI, that we have tools to be able to help them to implement them more securely. To be able to lock down those rights. To be able to say, look, here's a user that's actually coming in. Their role is X. Here's the scope of the questions that they need to be able to ask this particular agent. But at the same time, we need to be able to make sure that we also lock down the privileges between that agent and the data source as well, and be able to audit that.
So that's a good use of AI, to understand better what the privileges are and how to intervene, because it's not just looking at things, it's also, remediating things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's about, security is never really about sort of one area. And I think that's the challenge is sometimes we break it up into, different components, and we'll implement one but not the other. And it's a complete story. You have to have that identification of a landscape. You need to know what your threat surface is. You need to know what you need to lock down, what is actually going to be relevant, to your line of business, your organization. But at the same time, you've also got to have that, you need to have controls in place in order to be able to lock down what people can do and what obviously entities can do. You need to be able to have the detection to be able to look for, anomalous behavior, things that happen that, really are unexpected. But also, you need the prevention mechanisms as well. And this is where I think AI can actually help a lot, because I look at AI as almost like a glue that ties a lot of these different technologies together, because it gives you context. So let's say, for example, you see a threat happen on the network. So the ITDR solution says, yep, okay, we can actually see that, here's a particular type of attack that's going on. But very often you want to know the context. It's like, well, okay, it's an attack on a system, but what does that user have access to? What is on that system? What is that importance to me? Now, that's where the other tools in the Netwrix portfolio help, because we have data classification, we have DSPM.
Exactly. This was the real focus of Netwrix since the very beginning. As a matter of fact, Auditor, which is still the core of the system, is a product that puts together data and users and the interaction and behavior that users have with data. And then you add, other tools. Tools may be, a little bit too small term to say, but other features that actually put even more focus on the interaction between users and the data. Talking about privileges, talking about potential threat detection, and through a system of integration also with other tools, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not even just our tools. I mean, it's also involving other tools, externally. I mean, that the customer might have, because it's all about crowdsourcing, that level of context. Because in some respects, I mean, what you want to do is give customers this prescriptive mechanism. Where do I start? Because a customer might implement a set of tools and they say, like, I've got a massive amount of data. Where do I go? Where do I actually put my best efforts? Here's, a whole set of attacks. I've got, either a log or an AI actually telling me, like, here's something that's going on. Which are the ones that I, should be concerned about first? And I think, ultimately it's about having that well-rounded suite of products that allows you to be able to get that level of context. And as I said, also in the confines of, detecting what you've got, identifying your problem, being able to protect, add controls, to be able to lock down, what essentially all the different entities are able to do. But more importantly, to be able to alert you in such a manner that it's not just being flooded with a whole bunch of different events, that might be meaningless. It's like, when you think about that, the expressions, can't see the wood for the trees. It's that whole sort of notion of being able to allow you to see what is going to be important, because as we know, I mean, when you have an attack or something that's happening, speed, is absolutely of the essence. You need, the faster you can lock something down, the quicker you can actually circumvent.
So we're starting from a very robust core, which is Auditor, adding features, expanding the number of use cases. And guys, don't think about Netwrix just as, the Auditor product. Think that there are a number of use cases where Netwrix can be very, very helpful. And if you need to know more, Martin is here. But overall, just get in touch with .force. When I will be back in Italy, I will be glad to talk about it with you guys. Thank you, Martin, again.
Perfect. Thank you for having me.
Have a good show.
Thank you.